October 14th, 1066. The morning air over southern England was cold and silent. On one hill stood thousands of English warriors, shoulder to shoulder, their shields locked together in an unbreakable wall. Across the valley, a Norman army waited. Archers tightened their bowstrings. Knights adjusted their armor. Horses stamped nervously into the muddy ground. Both sides knew, by sunset, England would belong to someone else. One king would die, another would be crowned, and the history of an entire nation would change forever. But this story didn't begin on a battlefield. It began nearly 40 years earlier, with a boy nobody believed would ever become a ruler. His name was William, and history would remember him as William the Conqueror. Chapter 1. The boy they called the Bastard. William was born around the year 1028 in Normandy. His father was Robert I, Duke of Normandy, one of the most powerful rulers in northern France. But William's birth immediately made him an outsider. His mother, Helena, was not Robert's wife. She came from a family of modest status, and in medieval Europe that mattered. To many nobles, William wasn't a legitimate heir. He was simply the Bastard. The nickname followed him everywhere. Many believed a child born outside marriage had no place ruling a duchy. Before William was even old enough to understand politics, powerful men were already deciding that he should never wear a crown. But fate had other plans. In 1035, Robert left Normandy on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Before departing, he made one decision that shocked many nobles. He officially declared William as his heir. Few accepted it, and only months later, Robert died on his journey home. At just 8 years old, William became Duke of Normandy, at least in name, because in reality, his life had just become a nightmare. Chapter 2. A child surrounded by enemies. Normandy quickly descended into chaos. The nobles refused to accept a child as their ruler. Every ambitious lord saw an opportunity to seize power. Rebellions erupted across the duchy. Castles changed hands. Alliances were broken overnight. The people sworn to protect William became targets themselves. Several of his guardians were assassinated. One was murdered while sleeping in the same chamber as the young duke. Another was ambushed while escorting him through the countryside. Every day brought a new conspiracy. William rarely spent 2 nights in the same place. His loyal supporters secretly moved him from castle to castle, keeping his location hidden. Most children spent their days learning to read or hunt. William learned something far more valuable: how to survive. Those years taught him never to underestimate an enemy, never to trust appearances, and never to surrender. The frightened boy slowly disappeared. In his place, a determined leader began to emerge. Chapter 3. The first great victory. By his late teens, William had grown into a capable warrior, but ruling Normandy still seemed impossible. Many nobles openly challenged his authority. Some believed they could defeat him easily. They were wrong. In 1047, a powerful rebellion threatened to destroy William's rule forever, knowing he couldn't win alone. William asked for help from King Henry I of France. Together, their armies confronted the rebels near Val-es-Dunes. It was William's first great battle. The fighting was fierce. The rebel forces believed the young duke would panic. Instead, William rode directly into the heart of the battle. His courage inspired his soldiers. By the end of the day, the rebellion had collapsed. For the first time, the nobles understood something important. William wasn't just a child with a famous father. He was a commander, and defeating him would never be easy. That victory marked the beginning of a new Normandy, one built on discipline, loyalty, and military strength. Chapter 4. from duke to the most powerful lord in France. Over the next decade, William transformed Normandy into one of the strongest duchies in Europe. He built alliances, rewarded loyal nobles, punished traitors, improved castles, expanded trade, and trained one of the finest armies in Western Europe. Ironically, even King Henry of France, the man who had once saved William, eventually became worried about his growing power. The student had become stronger than the teacher. Several wars followed, but William survived every challenge. By the early 1060s, Normandy was richer, more organized, and more powerful than ever before. Still, William wanted something even greater. Across the English Channel, a kingdom without an heir waited, and that kingdom was England. Chapter 5. A promise that could start a war. England was ruled by King Edward the Confessor. Edward had no children. That left one dangerous question unanswered. Who would become the next King of England? William later claimed that Edward had promised him the throne years earlier. Whether that promise truly happened remains one of history's greatest debates. Some historians believe it, others doubt it completely. Then another event made everything even more complicated. England's most powerful noble, Harold Godwinson, travelled to Normandy. According to Norman writers, Harold swore a sacred oath to support William's claim to the English throne. If true, breaking that oath would be seen as both political betrayal and a sin before God. William never forgot that promise. He believed England already belonged to him. He was simply waiting for the right moment. Then, in January 1066, that moment finally arrived. Chapter 6. The Year of Three Kings. On January 5th, 1066, King Edward the Confessor died. England's throne was suddenly empty. Within hours, the English nobles gathered in London. Instead of waiting for William, they crowned Harold Godwinson as the new King of England. For the English, it was the fastest way to prevent chaos. But across the English Channel, William saw it very differently. He believed the crown had been stolen. He claimed Edward had promised him the throne, and he insisted Harold had sworn a sacred oath to support that promise. To William, this wasn't just politics. It was betrayal. But before he could prepare his invasion, another man entered the race, far to the north. The legendary Viking king Harald Hardrada also claimed the English crown. Backed by Harold's own exiled brother, Tostig Godwinson, Hardrada assembled one of the last great Viking invasion fleets. England now faced three kings, three armies, one crown. History had never seen anything like it. Chapter 7. The Last Viking Invasion. In September 1066, nearly 300 Viking longships appeared on England's northeastern coast. Harald Hardrada defeated the local English forces at the Battle of Fulford. The road to York was open. When King Harold heard the news, he made an extraordinary decision. His army marched almost 300 kilometers in just a few days. The speed shocked everyone. The Vikings never expected the English to arrive so quickly. On September 25th, the two armies met at Stamford Bridge. The fighting was savage. One famous legend tells of a lone Viking warrior who held the bridge by himself, cutting down dozens of English soldiers before finally being killed by a spear thrust from beneath the bridge. Whether every detail is true or not, the battle itself was very real. Harold Hardrada was struck by an arrow in the throat. The great Viking king fell. His army collapsed. Of the hundreds of ships that had carried the Viking army to England, only a small fraction were needed to carry the survivors home. Many historians consider Stamford Bridge the symbolic end of the Viking Age. Harold had won, but victory came at a terrible price. His men were exhausted, many were wounded, and they had no time to celebrate. A messenger arrived with terrible news. William had landed in southern England. Chapter 8. The Battle of Hastings. On September 28th, William landed at Pevensey with around 7,000 soldiers. Unlike earlier Viking raiders, he wasn't looking for treasure. He had come to claim a kingdom. He immediately built wooden fortifications, secured supplies, and waited. Harold turned his tired army around and marched south once again. On the morning of October 14th, the two armies faced each other near Hastings. The English formed a solid shield wall along the top of Senlac Hill. It was one of the strongest defensive positions imaginable. William attacked first. His archers fired thousands of arrows. Most bounced harmlessly off English shields. Then came the infantry. Then the cavalry. Again and again, the Normans charged uphill. Again and again, the shield wall held. At one point, a rumor spread across the battlefield. William is dead. Panic swept through the Norman army. Some soldiers began to retreat. Seeing this, William rode to the front. He removed his helmet so every soldier could see his face. Then he shouted, "Look at me! I am alive! Today we will win this kingdom!" His army rallied. William then changed his tactics. Some Norman knights pretended to flee. The English believed victory was close. Parts of the shield wall broke formation and chased them downhill. It was a trap. The Norman cavalry turned suddenly and surrounded the pursuing English soldiers. The shield wall was no longer unbreakable. Gap by gap, it began to collapse. As evening approached, the battle reached its final moments. King Harold was killed. The famous Bayeux tapestry shows an arrow striking his eye, though some historians believe he was cut down by Norman knights. Exactly how he died remains uncertain. But what happened next is beyond dispute. With their king dead, the English army broke apart. William had won. Chapter 9. The King Who Rebuilt England on Christmas Day, 1066. William was crowned King of England inside Westminster Abbey. But winning the throne was only the beginning. Many parts of England still resisted Norman rule. William answered with determination. Across the country, huge stone castles began to rise. The greatest of them was the Tower of London. These castles were more than military fortresses. They were symbols of Norman authority. William also ordered an enormous survey of his kingdom. Every village, every field, every animal, every landowner, everything was recorded in what became known as the Domesday Book. No medieval king had ever possessed such detailed knowledge of his realm. His government became stronger, his laws more organized, and the Norman influence spread into every corner of English life. Even the English language changed. Thousands of French words entered everyday speech. Words like government, justice, court, parliament, and crown all became part of England's identity. William had not only conquered a kingdom, he had transformed it forever. History remembers William as the Conqueror, but his greatest achievement was not simply winning a battle. It was building a legacy that survived for centuries. And that legacy began long before Hastings, when an exiled Viking named Rollo accepted a small piece of land in northern France. From that decision, Normandy was born. From Normandy came William. And from William's victory, a new England emerged. One battle, one king, one decision. That changed the course of history forever. If you enjoyed this documentary, Subscribe to Beyond Empires for more cinematic stories about forgotten empires, legendary rulers, and the battles that shaped our world, because history isn't just about remembering the past, it's about understanding how the world we live in today was created. Thanks for watching.